Hello and welcome to another edition of MHQ's Foundation 101 webcast, solo edition today. And we are going to do something that we like to do every now and then, is look at the past and see what sort of trend we have been able to extract out of it. This is topical since we are at the 10-month out of 12 mark in the year, which also happens to be the same week where we at MHQ have been happy to pass the 200 foundation under management mark in a bit about 4.5 years, so pretty good. Now, what we want to do is extract the trend out of it and what you can learn from it. So if we look at the jurisdiction in terms of foundation, for context, there are three registrars to choose from. The ADGM one was the first one to come on the scene. You see it here with key fundamentals. DIFC shortly after. Both common law centers, both very sophisticated, but with some slight differences, ability to morph, charitable purpose or not. And in practice, probably the most important one is that the DIFC is the go-to today for Dubai real estate. And then the structuring center of RAK ICC quite cleverly came to complement these two products, not only by being able to rely on the DIFC regulation and the DIFC court, but also by coming up with a product which is slightly different. And of particular importance and interest is the fact that the RAK ICC Foundation's registry is not public. So if you want to learn more about these three registries, the differences, and how they work in practice, we have an entire webcast on this topic. I will not go over that today, but feel free to go back to it and ask us any question if you want to. Now, topic of the day, let's look at the trends since foundation have started in the jurisdiction. And you can see there was a start, some early adopters, some people that educated themselves before jumping into the pond. And in 2019, everything changed. People starting to implement this structure, get acquainted, and you can clearly see a bump in use in both ADGM and clearly DIFC. And then in 2020, you have a substantial jump. ADGM remaining steady, but DIFC quintupling its numbers. And then at the same time, you have the RAK ICC, which in its first year registered 35 foundation. For the first time, we passed 100 foundation in a year. And then in 2021, this trend continues. Overall number double pretty much against the previous year. The DIFC did very well again. ADGM remained steady, and RAK ICC doubled his number. So what we have seen in 2022 over 10 months is very interesting because the trend has continued. If you look at these numbers for RAK ICC, you see that the center is likely to beat its historical best per year, currently at 52, likely to beat 65 by the end of the year. After a couple of years of steady delivery, ADGM will likely double its number for the year at more than one foundation per week. So this is very positive and indicative that a substantial number of local and the regional families have chosen to use the center going forward. What we see, and we'll talk about it later, is that a number of these foundations are connected to Abu Dhabi-based real estate. And the DIFC, you ask, well, it remains the leader, combining the same number as the two other centers, with 110 so far, likely to reach about 130 by the end of the year, which would be another record. And overall, if you look at it, this will be a record year for the jurisdiction, probably around 250 foundation by the end of the year. And we have now passed the 600 threshold, probably around 650 by the end of the year. All this in just about 5 years of practice. So these are remarkable numbers and clearly indicative of a need, a gap that has now been filled by this tool and ancillary tool introduced by each centers to complement foundations. Think of trust law regulations, think of light touch common law denominated holdings, typically the DIFC prescribed company, the special purpose vehicle down the road in Abu Dhabi. All these tools make it very easy for families to come in, educate themselves, execute, implement, and control by themselves. We'll come to that in one of the trends. So what are the trends? Well, we did a survey amongst MHQ clients once we had reached 100 clients. Now we have done exactly the same thing for the next 100 and combined these. To very little surprise, the trend has remained steady. So what we see is that most people actually set up foundations for 3 or 4 reasons. Intergenerational legacy planning, so avoiding succession, avoiding local probate. Many people take advantage to consolidate some of their high value or strategic assets, something they have not necessarily done until now, or maybe ineffectively using foreign-based structures, which are very frustrating. Wealth preservation, asset protection, this goes along of let's try to avoid the freeze of asset, the destruction of value over time, particularly due to probate, and business continuity, because there's nothing worse than a business bank account being frozen as a result of a patriarch passing. So by structuring, you actually avoid that. We still see a trend of some family using these tools to consolidate their philanthropic effort, but we haven't seen a spike in use. Perhaps this will change in 2023. Another trend is that whenever we talk about control of these structures as founders, as guardians, as council members, families like to keep some level of control. Typically, we see the founder in 4 foundations out of 5, keeping substantial reserve powers, so the ability to veto anything that the council member would do. And we also see the same patriarch sitting on the council. That means that for the patriarch, nothing changes. It is like being the shareholder of his own holding, his own group, but he can consolidate, structure, optimize, and over time pass control to his family very easily. So this is a trend to watch. This is what the UAE foundation regime enables people to do, is to be in control, as opposed to other jurisdictions where too much control would have an adverse fiscal effect. This is not the case here. Assets, clearly the big 3 are real estate, businesses and investment portfolios, whether these be based here or abroad doesn't matter. But again, this is very telling about the needs of people. For regionally based people, 80% of their assets statistically are in the region. So this tool addresses this 80% and then some. Many clients choose to actually have foreign-based investment portfolios, for example, structured or restructured under the foundation once they understand the tool and they are comfortable with it, as opposed to using Channel Island structure or a Caribbean structure that they would hold in their name. That is vastly inefficient. So this is a trend that we see. When we looked into the tool at inception, one of the key things was to enable Muslims to structure their asset and pass assets to the next generation in a manner that is compliant with the faith, but not necessarily strict to Sharia. So to no surprise, out of MHQ's 200 first clients, 50% are Muslims. Yet only a few, 6%, declare to follow strictly Sharia and wanting to implement that in their foundation, in their wishes. So that's interesting because many patriarchs, for example, wants to give a portion that is identical to boys and girls, typically in a business where the next generation is involved in. So that's a trend to watch because this can be done with the tool and in perfect compliance with the law of the land. Not a problem. It's a hiba, it's a lifetime donation. So it works. And last trend, something that has really emerged this year, as opposed to the previous one, is when people structure their assets, restructure their assets, consolidate, and you can see a nice example here of a family structure that has multiple asset classes under one structure, and it could be several, is they often in a phase 2 give a thought of, can I extend, can I optimize, can I recycle this structure, extend its purpose for other fiduciary structure that I have? Typically, one may have a trust registered in a foreign-based country with a third-party trustee, or may want to have a trust here, for example, for some purpose or abroad. And that's typically what we have been doing. You can transform this intermediary holding into what becomes a private trust company, and that entity, without being regulated, it's because it's done for one family only, can become the trustee of one or several trusts, whether DIFC trust, as in the example here, holding shares in Bahamas, BVI, for example, and bank account in Switzerland and in the UK, or foreign-based trust. Typically, we of late, a lot of Cyprus trusts have now become shifted to locally based trustees following this model. Last but not least, the trends in providers and who is active in this market. We're very happy at MHQ to be leading this market in ADGM and DIFC. You can see the numbers combined here. But what is perhaps telling is two things. One is that a number of structures remain unallocated to providers. What does that mean is that families that have been using the DIFC or the ADGM by themselves with a holding become their own operator and do not necessarily need a service provider. That is excellent, not necessarily for business, but for these families, because that means they can have full control over what they are doing. And if they have already a holding, they can just simply top it up with a structure, seek advice, and then control that fiduciary structure or these fiduciary structures by themselves. So one of the largest provider in the country actually happens to be the family themselves. The other trend to watch is that the people that lead this market, aside from our humble firm, is and are independent firms. So out of the largest 4 foundation administrator in the country, what you can see is 3 are independent firms based in the UAE with a substantial track record here and focusing on the local market. That is unsurprising, but also very healthy, because clients can rely on people that have been here for a while, not just people that come to the region with often a dubious track record and that try to sell them something they do not necessarily understand or have a vested interest in. So well done to our peers. You know who you are. And if you want more information about how we get this data, feel free to reach out to us. So, on this note, this is the 10-month trend so far. Perhaps we see each other in 2 months to see how we have fared for the next 2. Thank you very much, and see you next week for another Foundation 101 webcast. We'll look at 2 topics that are hot. One being art structured under foundation, the second being UK real estate. Are foundation compatible with UK real estate? We'll have the answer then and there. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.